power lost in the moment of triumph. It happened at the peak, the exact moment the world believed the billionaire had finally become untouchable. Cameras flashed, audiences roared, investors celebrated as the company announced its greatest victory yet. But beneath the glittering surface of triumph, a single decision waited in the shadows. A decision that would quietly strip the billionaire of the very power they had spent a lifetime building. People assume power is seized in bold moves and dramatic gestures. But sometimes power is lost in silence, in a moment so subtle, so ordinary, that even the one losing it doesn't recognize the shift until it's too late. And in an age where leaders stand on fragile pedestals, the fall often begins when everything looks perfect. The reveal began the night of the celebration. The billionaire, exhausted but exhilarated, signed off on a proposal that seemed harmless, a structural adjustment designed to streamline operations for the next phase of global expansion. It promised efficiency, clarity, and speed. Every advisor approved it. Every chart supported it. Every headline predicted a new golden era. But hidden within the proposal was a clause the billionaire barely noticed. A clause that redistributed authority across several committees. A clause that shifted critical decision-making away from a visionary who had led every breakthrough. A clause that seemed like a technicality, yet would redefine the entire balance of power. At first, nothing changed. The billionaire felt secure, confident, still at the helm. They appeared in interviews, made keynote speeches, and outlined bold new plans for the company's future. The world still saw them as the driving force, the irreplaceable architect, an empire entering its prime. But beneath the surface, the structure control had already begun to shift. The reveal sharpened when a major partnership negotiation hit a snag. For years, the billionaire personally guided these deals, using instinct and charisma to secure terms no one else could achieve. But this time, the committee stepped in quietly, politely, and handled the negotiation without consulting them. The billionaire dismissed it as a one-time oversight. It wasn't. Over the next weeks, small decisions slipped from their hands. Budget approvals rerouted, strategic plans revised, long-standing relationships reassigned. Each shift was subtle, almost invisible, yet each one chipped away at the authority the billionaire believed they still possessed. And then came the moment that signaled something deeper. A confidential report the billionaire should have received directly was instead delivered to the committee. A report about the company's next major frontier. A report that should have gone to the person who built the empire. The billionaire stared at the email, realizing something chilling. Power had already changed hands, and they hadn't even felt it happening. The shift in power accelerated with unsettling precision. The billionaire, still unaware of the full scope, continued to move through the empire as though nothing had changed. But every hallway conversation, every meeting agenda, every redirected memo hinted at a silent reorganization happening just beneath the surface. Authority wasn't being challenged. It was being absorbed, quietly redistributed into layers of structure that no longer needed the billionaire's approval. The reveal deepened when a longtime executive, someone fiercely loyal for decades, hesitated before forwarding a critical document. They smiled politely, offered a vague explanation, and mentioned that the committee should probably review it first. The phrase lingered like a distant echo. The billionaire felt a subtle chill, but brushed it aside. Surely, they still held final say. Surely, their voice remained central. But the next week proved otherwise. A marketing strategy the billionaire had crafted personally was altered before launch. Not slightly, fundamentally. The tone shifted. The message changed. The rollout plan bore almost no resemblance to their original vision. When the billionaire confronted the team, they offered rehearsed smiles and said the committee felt the revisions better aligned with current priorities. It wasn't defiance. It was dismissal, wrapped in courtesy. Pressure built as the billionaire realized communication flows had changed. Reports that once arrived daily now came weekly. Teams that once sought guidance now acted independently. Critical updates were filtered, shortened, softened. Meetings that used to require the billionaire's presence now moved forward without them. It was as if the empire had learned to operate without its architect, and was doing so with increasing confidence. The emotional weight intensified when the billionaire attempted to intervene in a major financial decision. They prepared notes, gathered data, and stepped into the boardroom with the same authority they had commanded for years. But this time, the conversation shifted around them like a river flowing past a rock. The committee acknowledged their concerns, nodded politely, then proceeded with a plan already finalized. Their vote no longer carried the gravity it once did. The billionaire left the room feeling something they had never felt inside their own empire: irrelevance. The conflict sharpened when a confidential memo surfaced, one the billionaire wasn't meant to see. It outlined a proposed restructuring of leadership roles, effectively reducing the visionary position to a ceremonial figurehead. Decisions would be handled collectively. Authority would be standardized. Control would be distributed across the committee to ensure long-term stability. The language was strategic, polished, careful. But the meaning was brutal. The empire no longer belonged to its creator. The final blow came when an investor, one who had backed the billionaire from the very beginning, gently suggested that stepping back from operations was the natural evolution of leadership. Their tone was sympathetic, even kind, but the message was unmistakable. The moment of triumph had become the moment of transition, and the billionaire, once the center of gravity, now orbited the edges of the very world they built. The conflict was no longer approaching. It had already begun. The conflict erupted the moment the billionaire finally understood the truth. The empire was no longer theirs command. What had begun as subtle shifts, a rerouted memo, a revised strategy, a misreport, had grown into a tidal wave of structural change. The committees weren't simply assisting with leadership. They were replacing it. The billionaire felt the shift inside the company like a temperature drop. Hallways once filled with deference now carried a distant, polite restraint. Long-trusted executives avoided direct eye contact. Meetings that once paused for their entrance now continued without interruption. The empire was rebelling. It was transitioning, moving toward a future that no longer required the person who built it. The emotional weight deepened as the billionaire attempted to regain control. They drafted new proposals, outlined bold strategic visions, and pushed to reassert authority. But every attempt met the same response: soft resistance wrapped in corporate diplomacy. We'll consider it. The committee will evaluate. Let's revisit this next quarter. Words that felt accommodating, but carried no real commitment. And then came the moment that shattered any illusion of remaining power. A global partnership. The kind of monumental deal the billionaire once negotiated personally was finalized without their involvement. They found out through a press release, reading their own company's announcement at the same time as the public. No briefing, no consultation, not even a courtesy call. It was a quiet humiliation, but a defining one. Inside the boardroom, tension reached its peak. A meeting originally framed as a strategic review devolved into a confrontation. The billionaire demanded clarity. Who was making the final decisions? Who authorized the changes? Who approved bypassing the visionary entirely? Committee members exchanged careful glances before finally speaking the truth. The structure had evolved. Decision-making processes were now distributed. Authority was collective. The company had outgrown the old model of a single decision-maker. In other words, the billionaire had become a symbol, not a leader. The emotional breaking point came when the billionaire returned to their office, the same office where every idea, every breakthrough, every milestone had been born. For the first time, it felt unfamiliar, colder, smaller, like a museum exhibit of past achievements rather than a command center of an empire. They stared at the artifact of their rise. Prototypes, awards, framed headlines proclaiming their genius. Once, these items felt like proof of control. Now, they felt like remnants of a power already slipping into history. The turning point arrived quietly. A trusted advisor, one who had remained loyal through every storm, walked in and closed the door. Their voice was soft but unflinching. "You didn't lose a company," they said. "You just never built a structure that could hold your power once the world stopped needing a single visionary." The words cut deep, because they were true. The empire hadn't betrayed the billionaire. It had simply grown beyond them. The moment of triumph had eclipsed the person who made it possible. replacing brilliance with systems, processes, and committees designed for stability rather than boldness. And now the billionaire stood at the edge of a reality they never imagined. The dream remained powerful, but the power no longer belonged to its creator. The emotional peak tightened like a knot in the chest. The next move, whatever it would define the billionaire's legacy. Would they fight to reclaim control or choose a more painful path? Letting go, the climax arrived not in a fiery confrontation, but in a moment of stunning clarity. The billionaire stood before the board one final time, not to reclaim power, but to release it. The room fell silent as they acknowledged what no leader their magnitude had ever willingly admitted. The empire had evolved beyond the command of a single mind, and clinging to old authority would only weaken the future they had fought so fiercely to build. The billionaire spoke with a calm steadiness that surprised even themselves. They described the rise of the company, the triumphs, the breakthroughs, and then the unspoken truth that the organization's greatest strength had become its weakness: dependence on one visionary. It was time, they said, for the company to grow on systems, not on a single individual's shoulders. Gasps spread to the boardroom as the billionaire announced their decision. They would step back from all operational power and transition into a strategic advisory role, not as a figurehead, not as a shadow ruler, but as a mentor to the leadership collective now guiding the empire. Some executives protested, some cried, some remained frozen in disbelief. The committees, built to replace centralized authority, suddenly realized the magnitude of the responsibility falling squarely upon them. For years, they had prepared to inherit power. Now they understood the weight of it. Yet the billionaire's resolve didn't waver. Outside the boardroom, the news spread like wildfire. Media outlets erupted with speculation. Markets fluctuated. Analysts scrambled to interpret what this meant for the future. But inside the company, something remarkable happened. Unity. With the visionary's blessing, the leadership collective stepped into their roles with renewed purpose. The transition, instead of weakening the empire, solidified it. Slowly, the world adjusted to the new reality. And the billionaire, the once mythic figure at the center of everything, discovered a life beyond the pedestal. They traveled, they read, they spent time with people long overshadowed by ambition. And with space to breathe, their identity began to shift from empire builder to architect of ideas, free from the pressure of controlling every outcome. Months later, the company unveiled its next groundbreaking innovation. The billionaire attended the launch as a guest, not a commander. They watched from the edge of the crowd as the new leadership team delivered the keynote. The applause that followed wasn't for a single visionary anymore. It was for the legacy they left behind, a legacy strong enough to stand without them. Because true power isn't measured by how tightly it's held. It's measured by the courage to let go. Subscribe to join the journey.